Thanks for staying.
Have a seat. So we'll open it up, take some questions from the audience in a little bit, but I wanted to start the conversation rolling. You know, as I was looking over your filmography this afternoon, one thing that becomes really apparent, language is really important in your films. So it seems entirely fitting that you've now made a film revolving around one of the great orators of the 20th century.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I'm wondering how did you go about distilling Orson Welles, the man, the myth, the public perception of him, down to a character that you thought you could work with and do a story about?
Wow. I mean, yeah, confronting Welles, that's such a overwhelming challenge, very intimidating. But I felt, because of all those things, the man, the myth, the legacy, it felt somewhat doable because it was only 1 week in his life, in a little obscure moment, lost to history by and large, but that is really pretty unknown, his pre-War of the Worlds life. Most people, when they think of Welles, they kind of start at War of the Worlds and then they get to Hollywood pretty quick. A lot of people don't, really remember. I guess theaters, it's pretty ephemeral, so very few people still alive who saw this production. So it was, I always called this like my young Mr. Welles. My favorite biopic is John Ford's Young Mr. Lincoln. They take Lincoln as a small-town lawyer back in Illinois, but you know what he's going to become, but let's look at him as a young man. So Welles is only 22 here, so yeah, 22. He was already famous. He had, the previous year, at the previous couple years at the Federal Theater, he had done some really, Cradle Will Rock and his famous Harlem Voodoo Macbeth set in Haiti, and he was already, and then his radio career was really taking off. And it's interesting, by May of '38 he was on the cover of Time magazine. I have it, that scene where he goes, by the end of the year we will be on the cover of Time. He was on the cover of Time in May, looking like about a 70-year-old man from the role he was playing in Heartbreak House. And then that next October, War of the Worlds, so incredible. If you look at what he did in those couple years, it's just astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I read that one of the first things you did when you started working on this film was decide you have to find your Welles before moving forward.
My reverence was such that I wasn't going to, it was an intimidating movie to even undertake. I knew it'd be a tough movie, not only to make, but to get financed, just to even, so it was sort of a pipe dream. I had optioned the book, Robert Kaplow's wonderful novel, that I found so charming, and it's just a wonderful story, kind of the best kind of historical fiction, where the history is very accurate, very detailed, and then the fiction part is I found very charming and telling. So we just dug in. Holly and Vince, who did the adaptation and were co-producers. We were sort of this creative team. We just worked on it, together all the way. But so we had the book, we had the script, and it was like, okay, next step, Welles. So you run through the list of all the actors, and you think of everybody and you've ever seen, and we're kind of hitting the wall there. Like, it's such a suicide mission, I think, to play Welles. I remember theorizing, who our Welles is? There's a young actor, he's probably doing Shakespeare in London. There's probably somebody who looks a little bit like him. And I swear, about a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, I get an email from Robert Kaplow in New York, the novelist, and because we were talking all the time. And there was a little ad in a 49-seat theater in Midtown Manhattan for 13 shows only or something like that. There was a play called Rosebud, The Lives of Orson Welles, a one-man show. And I look at it and I'm like, who's this guy? So I fly to New York. I live in Austin. And I see the show. And it kind of starts about War of the Worlds and goes, he's in a fat suit. He's this old man. It's wonderful, wonderful little play. But I got to talking to Christian after. And I think he already knew of this. There was a script and this was a possibility. So we talked for a while. And I liked him immediately. He's British. He's from Manchester. I was really impressed. Because I had heard that movie. I heard he was from Manchester, and I said, oh yeah, there's a movie out, Control, about Joy Division, Ian Curtis. And he's like, He's classical training. He never heard of Joy Division, so I was like, wow, this guy's, he's from another time. I mean, he's sort of like Wells in that way. He's classically trained pianist, world class. I mean, really amazing guy. But I flew him to Austin, and we did like an old-fashioned screen test. We hung out, rehearsed for a day or two, filmed 3 scenes from the movie. Period dress. I had an old car, so we shot this stuff. I really just wanted to see what it was like working with him, because it was such a big commitment. And he had never done a film. He had done some theater, but like I said, he is this world-class pianist, and I think the key to his performance, if you like him as Wells, isn't just his DNA resemblance, but it's really himself. It's who he is. He is this Wellsian character. He was the 4-year-old who was told he was a genius his whole life. He was touring the world as a teenager, playing Rachmaninoff and halls all over the world. He's really that good a concert pianist who came to acting a little bit later. And he's an incredible storyteller, brilliant guy. So he's Wellsian himself. So that's the performance, I think, is so much about him, And it was amazing working with him. He's kind of a completely unique individual. I love the guy. He's fantastic.